Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, October the 10th. And welcome to our commentary. Happy Columbus Day. So, it was supposed to actually, technically, it's October 12th. But, when they changed all these holidays to a Monday, then it became, I guess, whatever the Monday is in the month of October. So Columbus Day technically is the 12th, which would be, I guess that would be Wednesday, right? But because of all these changes they make, it is now on the 10th. So happy Columbus Day. Remember, you're not going to get any mail today, and the banks are closed. So just remember that. That's what happens on federal holidays. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about a post that I have over at the American Thinker. And my post is about the Vice President Harris, who came to Texas over the weekend. She came to Austin, Texas. She visited the University of Texas Lyndon Johnson Library, and I think she spoke at that particular library. And now, if the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, is responsible for what's going on the border, at least that's the assignment that the president gave her. Now, you would expect the vice president to come to Texas and talk about the border, right? Maybe go down to the border, maybe say hello to some border patrol agents and show them your support in these difficult times. No, that's not what the vice president did. She came to Austin, Texas to talk about abortion and voting rights. So she came to Austin, Texas to talk about abortion and voting rights. I'm not sure how successful she's going to be with those two topics, but that's what she came here to speak about. And maybe some of you are asking, where was Beto O'Rourke when the vice president was in town? Because she endorsed him. She publicly endorsed Beto O'Rourke for governor. So where was Beto O'Rourke? Well, he was not in Austin, Texas. He was nowhere near the vice president. He was, according to his campaign, he was actively campaigning. So he was out there somewhere campaigning. So that means that he did not see President Biden when the president was here a few months ago, and now did not see Vice President Harris when she came into town. So a lot of people are asking, why do you go to Texas and not talk about the border? And I've got a couple of explanations. I discussed this in my post. The first one is that the topic of the border is not a good issue for the Democrats. The Democrats are simply not talking about the border. If you go down to the border itself and you see, for example, Representative Cuellar, who's running for re-election in a very tough fight, he's not talking about the border. He's criticizing President Biden's border policy. So that's why she doesn't want to talk about the border, because this is not an issue that a lot of Democrats want to talk about. They're trying to overlook the border. I mean, even Beto O'Rourke has been critical of the president's policies on the border. So that's the first reason, that she knows ahead of time that this is not a topic that Democrats want to talk about. Democrats do not want to talk about the border. The other reason is that she found in Austin, Texas, a very receptive audience for her speech on abortion. Remember, Austin, Texas is probably the most liberal Democrat city in the state of Texas. Not Democrat, but liberal Democrat. I mean, it's a blue city. So she went there, and that's where she spoke about abortion. So was it very successful? Well, she probably picked up some checks and some money for the Texas Democrat Party. Is it going to have any impact on the election? The answer is no. And the fact that Beto O'Rourke was not there with the vice president tells you all you have to know about this trip to Texas. Well, there's a little controversy coming out of the city of Los Angeles. If you've been watching the news here in the last 24 hours, there was a recording that was released from a conversation that certain members of the LA City Council were having. And they were talking about politics, internal politics. And then they started talking about a Black member of the city council. And they used some language about this Black person that was not exactly, let's say, very politically incorrect. They used a Spanish word named changuito, which means, particularly in the Mexican Spanish, it means, when I say Mexican Spanish, I mean, it's all Spanish, but in different countries, they have different words for different things. In Mexico, changuito means little monkey, little monkey. And that's how they referred to the black son of a member of the LA City Council. Now, of course, this has become very embarrassing for the, let's just say, for the members of the LA City Council. They're calling for their resignation. And honestly, I don't know if they're going to resign. I mean, this is LA, and LA is run by Democrats, but this is a time for the media to show a little backbone and force these people to explain why they are referring to the son of a black city council member as a little monkey. Let's see what they have to say about that. Now, the defense, of course, people are coming to the defense of this lady who's the president of the city council in LA. And the people are saying, well, it's a private conversation. I mean, it was not intended for public consumption. Well, I understand that. I understand that. Once upon a time, that's the way it was. But that's no more. I mean, any public figure speaking anywhere has to know that somebody's going to be taping the conversation. And the other thing that I would like all the Democrats to remember is that back in 2016, when somebody released a private conversation between then candidate Donald Trump and somebody in the bus, that conversation was 11 years before the election. So 11 years, 2005, when he was a private citizen and he was talking in a bus to somebody else, he made some very bad remarks about women that we all criticized back then. Now, the defense of some of the Trump people was, well, you know, it's a private conversation. He didn't know that it was going to be listened to outside of the bus. Well, nobody in the Democratic Party bought that excuse back in 2016. They all said that how you speak in private says a lot about your nature and your character. Well, if that applies to Trump, that applies to these Democrats in the LA City Council. And how they speak about black people, or how they spoke about black people, maybe that says a lot about their character too. Maybe that says a lot about how they really feel about black people. So I hope the media, you know, this is really in the hands of the media right now. The media in LA is going to have to get tough with these people and demand some answers, because this is, to me, a pretty insulting situation, something that should not have been allowed to happen. Or at least these people, I think they should resign. Now, I don't know that they will, but I guarantee you that there were Republicans, they would be there'd be all kinds of calls for them to resign and to take the heat. I don't know if that's going to happen with Democrats in LA, but again, that's why I put this on the media now. It's up to the media now to show us that they're really journalists and not Democrats dressed up as journalists, as happens so much out there. Let me say hello to my friend I Am for joining us at this opportunity. Let me take a quick look at the midterms. Now, we're going to be getting into a lot of this about the midterms and what happened in LA and the vice president today afternoon, or this evening, when we do our podcast with our friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. We're going to be talking about a lot of these issues, and the podcast will be available later this evening for you to listen to. We always recommend our chats with Bill because they're very complete and we get into a lot of details. But today, one of the topics that we're going to talk about is that the midterms, if you look at the numbers, the trend is moving in the GOP direction, whether it's the generic ballot, whether it's the approval, whether it's the numbers in Arizona or Nevada or Georgia, Pennsylvania. What you're seeing is that the Republican candidate is moving in the right direction. Now, some of them are behind and they need a little movement, but at least they're moving in the right direction against some of the incumbents. So I think you're going to see that in these last 30 days. You're going to see the Republicans picking up momentum and the Democrats probably accepting the reality that election day is not going to be a very nice day for them. So check out our interview with Bill Katz this evening. As I say, it'll be available in my blog as well as Blog Talk Radio. And sometimes I put it on Facebook. Sometimes some people put it on Twitter. So if you follow me over there, check it out over there. A couple of things on this day in history that were very interesting. Back in 1957, the Milwaukee Braves won their only World Series. Now, the Milwaukee Braves are now the Atlanta Braves. For those of you who are baseball fans, they used to be called the Milwaukee Braves. and they left Milwaukee after the 1965 season and became the Atlanta Braves. So on this day in 1957, they won the World Series. So this is the only baseball team, professional baseball team, in Wisconsin history that who has won the national title. The Milwaukee Braves winning the World Series in 1957. Now the Milwaukee Brewers were in the series in 1982, but they lost to St. Louis. Now, of course, some of the other teams, like the Milwaukee Bucks, won the NBA title a couple of times, and the Green Bay Packers, of course, have won the NFL title many times, the Super Bowl as well. But the Milwaukee Braves, the baseball team, that was the only time that Milwaukee got to have a World Series celebration. And they won on this day in 1957 by beating the Yankees in 7 games. Lou Burdett was the winning pitcher, and Lou Burdett won 3 games in that series. So he went down in history as one of the favorite names. If you go to Wisconsin and you're talking to your grandfather and you mention Lou Burdett, he's going to know. He's going to know who you're talking about, because that was a big thing back in 1957. On this day in 1973, this is going to be a trivia question for most of you who are under 45, and you may not remember this. But on this day in 1973, Vice President Spiro Agnew resigned the vice presidency. Now, the name Spiro Agnew is not a name that many people remember anymore. He was Richard Nixon's vice president. When Nixon was elected in 68, the vice president was Spiro Agnew, who was the governor of Maryland when he was selected by Richard Nixon to be his vice president. They were both reelected, of course, in 1972 with big numbers. But on this day, he resigned because of a scandal back in Maryland regarding some allegations of bribery and bribery and other things that had happened when he was governor, and also when he was Milwaukee County executive. So he resigned, left the vice presidency. That created an opening in the vice presidency that was filled by Gerald Ford, who became vice president a couple of months later. He was nominated by President Nixon, and he was accepted by the Congress in December of 1973. So a lot of things on this day in 1973. The resignation of a vice president. That's a trivia question. I bet very few people under 50 remember that. Vice President Agnew resigned the vice president. I don't even know if anybody remembers the name Agnew or Spiro Agnew anymore. I mean, does anybody even remember that name? Well, he became very famous very fast, became vice president out of nowhere. Nobody knew him when he was selected by Richard Nixon. And then he won twice with Richard Nixon on the ticket. And then, at this time in 1973 and early 73, a lot of people were talking about Spiro Agnew being the Republican nominee in 1976. And had things been different, who knows? Maybe he would have been the Republican nominee, but it wasn't meant to be, because he resigned on this day in 1973. That is your trivia question. You want to get somebody? You want to win a bet with somebody? Ask him, who was Spiro Agnew? Just ask him. And I'd be amazed if many people remember it, because it was such a footnote in history, to say the least. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks to all of you for putting in your comments, and some of you put them later after the video is released, and we like them either way. We like them now or later. We just enjoy your comments very much. Have a great day, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.